Okay, let's see. No, that's the wrong email. There we go. Gary has an email.
All right. Welcome everybody to webinar number 17,
17, yes.
Open Forum. We are here to answer your questions and answer some email questions, as well as we did have an event. We did have sort of a request about doing some event programming, so we may tackle that later. So, Rick, go ahead. Do you had anything to say or comment on?
No, not really.
Yeah.
Been traveling, saw some people in Ohio, and where was I at Tehachapi last weekend? So
How was that?
cold, very cold.
All right. Well, cool. Well, I guess we'll kick right in there. You guys, anybody live online, if you have any questions, post them into the chat window. Or you can raise your hand if you need to, if you have trouble typing and you actually want to speak at us. Otherwise, let's see. You want to go, should we hit the some of the questions that were sent to us beforehand on email?
Oh, we got a question from RH Phil.
All right.
What is your show schedule? Usually you get our show schedule in our newsletter. Tells you where we're going to be in the next few months. Right now, we don't really have anything scheduled till next year. So if I didn't see you there, you missed us.
Yeah, the normal shows that we usually count on going. There's the Euro West in July out here in California. We have what is the big show over in Amherst? What's the title for that one? I forget.
Amherst is the Amherst Railway Society.
That's Big E. That's
Yeah,
Big E, right?
Big E. Euro.
And then we have the train show in what is it? The one in November. That's in Milwaukee.
So
Yeah,
that one is not going on this year.
Yeah, most of the schedule's really been affected by COVID. Show cancellation. Thank you, ARS in Springfield.
Yeah, I forget what ARS stands for. But
Yeah, and then we do have a couple of events, just sort of more or less. What do we call those when we're accommodating store owners? We have some store visits,
in-store open houses.
Yeah, we've done a couple of those this year. Rick, just like I said, he just came back from Tehachapi.
Gold Coast Station.
What was the one you did before that?
It's the Great Brea Train Show. It's outside of Cleveland.
And then I've been out to Train World out in the East Coast, New York. Did a couple of events there. Not this year, not past. I don't think I did. I don't recall doing. Definitely didn't do anything last year. So, anyways, let's see. So let's kind of go to the. Questions online. Was there any particular one that you had that you were able to answer? We'll start with let's see. We had actually was a question about updating a CS2 if my CS2 is acting as a slave or a auxiliary unit to the CS3. I don't think that's critical.
I think it has to be updated to a certain firmware, but I don't know what that is.
The firmware. Oh, is that right for firmware?
I think so, but it was like 2 or 3 updates ago, so just make it current. You should be good.
Yeah, there really has not been a whole lot of developmental update on the CS2. If you haven't actually updated in a while, it's actually probably a good idea to do an update. I recently got some CS2s back from repairs because, again, these units are they're over 10 years old. So
Yeah.
there is actually some newer versions that are available that kind of make some of the memory routing or event routing a little easier. I might be able to show you that later in the program on one major change, but there's not a whole lot of changes to it. Is an update critical? I don't really think so. But it's always a good idea to do so anyways. All right. Thanks for that question. That was out from our friend in Hawaii, Gary.
Gary. We got another question. The gentleman asking if is it possible to drive a Marklin digital layout or possible to drive on a Marklin digital layout an AC locomotive from another company? If it's digital 3-rail, yes. Basically, it's just the protocol. It's most likely DCC, which the central station is capable of running DCC. So you'd probably set it up as a DCC locomotive and go from there. You have to enter it manually. It's not going to be MFX because that's Marklin.
Yeah, pretty much. The CS3 it is a multi-protocol system, so you can even run on a different track a 2-rail DCC. So there's no issue with running an AC from another company. That's generally, I don't know, maybe it's egotistical to say so, but when a company actually lists out an AC locomotive, it's almost like, it feels to me like they're always referring to a Marklin layout or Marklin 3-rail track. So yeah. I don't really, again, it could be naive. I don't really know what other brands sort of have sourced out originally as 3-rail. Yeah, they're probably out there. So cool.
But then again, why would you?
Yeah, you guys, you're with the crowd. You're all dealing with Marklin. You know where it's at. Okay. I have this weird thing where if I use my top monitor, I feel like everybody's looking up my nose. Okay, we got. I'm trying to figure out which one of these questions we want to tackle first. We got a turntable question and one with a number of questions. Let me read through these. Also, if you guys have any kind of insight or something that maybe we don't cover, feel free to add them into the chat box. One question: one of my digital locos starts in the wrong direction. In other words, forward. If it's set for a forward direction, it moves backwards. How do I fix this problem? I assume some wires need to be switched. I think in the case of if you did sort of a digital installation and you basically did a digital upgrade and you added a decoder, it's possible. It's easy to switch wires back and forth from the 2 poles on a motor. I think in some of the older locomotives, non-MFX or whatever, I do sort of know that when you had a locomotive that was initially going in the wrong direction, it would work sometimes if you pulled the locomotive off, switched the direction on the control, and put the locomotive back on, and it would straighten it out. But with the newer digital ones, it may be more encoded. I believe you can also switch directions inside the locomotive decoder, right, Rick?
Yeah, you can with the central station or the programmer. Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't say what controller or if it's an upgraded, what decoder is inside the locomotive. If it's an FX decoder, I can't remember if you can reverse direction in an MFX decoder. It's maybe, I'd have to go in and look at it, but the easiest way to do that is to change the wires in an FX decoder, the green and the red to the motor. And then as long as your headlights are going the right way, you got to remember, just because it changes the motor direction doesn't mean it's going to change the headlight direction. Especially in an MFX locomotive, you would have to get in and edit the headlights to be reversed also. So it's easy to do without changing any wires in the central station or the
Yeah,
photo.
that's a really that's a good way to put it, because that's a lot of time that's when I actually verify whether or not I got the motor wires backwards, is because the headlights are just in opposite directions of the direction of travel.
When I install a decoder, the first thing I do is get the ground and the pickup shoe. Did I freeze there again?
Yeah,
There
you
we go.
froze again. No,
I get the
you're
ground
back.
and the, pardon me?
You're back. You're okay
Okay.
now.
I get the ground and the pickup shoe wires connected, and then I go ahead and connect the chokes on the motor and just put the green and blue wires on the motor, the solder, just temporarily. I don't cut them. I don't, just the long lengths of wire. Then I make sure that none of the other wires are touching anything. I usually clamp them in something, and I'll just see which way the motor's going. I'll register it and see which way the motor's turning. If it's right, all I have to do is shorten the wires. If it's wrong, all I do is shorten them and reverse it. So it is kind of a two-step process. There's not much I can do about that besides go in and program it afterwards, which I don't want to do. So
Yeah, that was a challenge. So we'll get back to the email question so we can answer a live question here. Is there conflict if two MFX locomotives have the same digital address? The answer to that is
it depends.
it depends on the controller too. I mean, if you're using a CS3 or you're using a mobile station,
Well,
well, any Marklin controller,
let's back
MFX
up
is,
a second. Let's back up a second. Are you referring to the default address being the same, or are you talking about the MFX registration? Because one is possible and one is kind of not, even though
are
I've heard.
you referring to whether or not, well, you can't really change an address, or you don't get the option to change address when you're loading a locomotive. It'll just index it for you.
It indexes it, and
Yeah, it
that's just it.
indexes it. It's not like adding an address for an article like a signal or turnout where you can keep the address that you set. So the locomotive is going to index the address, right?
Yeah, but on the I believe it's a setup tab on your Central Station 3, it shows an address, but that is just an index. It's not actually the address, the default address. And the default address is there if you're going to run the locomotive on a 6021, the old two-digit digital controller. So that can be changed in the CVs. But even if that is duplicated, it won't matter with MFX. Now, I heard a rumor that somebody's having trouble with an MFX registration duplicating on a layout, but not being there in front of the controller. We really don't know what's going on.
Yeah, well, there's a subsequent question. Is it possible for a CS3 to give two locos the same address? If it's not, if they are MFX, then it's not likely, because it's going to index one if it finds a match. However, that doesn't exclude you from having, let's say you've loaded the MFX locomotive and then you added an FX decoder that's not MFX, and then you use the default address, then you potentially could have a duplicated address, because MFX is going to index when it locates a address already used in the system. And if you add a non-MFX locomotive after that, you're basically assigning an address and maybe not verifying that it was already taken by the MFX decoding index. So that's when you can have similar addresses. But when it's strictly MFX, it's not likely, because the system again will know that it's an MFX decoder and index it automatically.
Well, the Central Station controls an MFX locomotive through the MFX protocol. Even if the default address is the same as another locomotive, that other locomotive won't run. Okay, if you got an FX decoder at address 40 and an MFX decoder that gives a default address, that has a default address of 40, it's not going to control both locomotives at once.
Right, that's what I'm saying. But if he loads the MFX locomotive first and it sets it for 40, and then he takes a new FX locomotive and loads it up and uses 40 as the address, he's basically duplicated the address manually.
But it doesn't use the
It doesn't
two-digit
use the
address. It
MFX, but it
uses the
uses,
MFX address.
yeah, but the thing is, you can't really match it to the address identified in the CS3. You can't really identify an MFX address
Right.
correctly.
Right.
It's hard to tell what address is actually being used by an
Right.
MFX system. But you can inadvertently use an address that's matched up already in the system. Ideally, I think when you're adding a locomotive manually, it's going to give you in numbers whether it's red by saying that it's already being used, or if it's black and saying it's an available address. So it gets a little tricky, especially when you're adding non-MFX locomotives after the fact, because the MFX has no way of sort of backtracking and saying, oh, this one, you want to use this, we're going to reassign this. It doesn't really do it. It doesn't really work that way. So you follow kind of where I'm getting at, Rick? I think you and I are just like not understanding each other, right?
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
And no matter what, you're wrong.
All right. So there you have it, folks. Conflict within the team.
Yeah.
Okay. How do I enable constant speed for Loco pulling a train independent of climbing or descending? I have both MFX and Marklin motor FX.
You don't. It does it automatically.
That's what I was thinking. So I was just checking. So
that's why if you take a locomotive that's running and you sort of inhibit it a little bit with your fingers, just to slow it down, you let it go and it'll go fast and then slow down to its normal speed, and that's duplicating going uphill or downhill. It basically gets, it's hard to explain, but a simple way to put it is it uses more power going uphill, so it tries to turn faster. The motor doesn't really turn faster, it uses more power fighting gravity.
I think,
and less power going downhill. So
yeah, and I think electronically, it's the difference between the old analog model of power to a train as opposed to the pulse width modulation that's applied on newer locomotives.
So it's basically automatic.
Yeah.
Want to give a shout out to our Eastern New England friends of the ETE. If anybody wants to join a train club, ETE is a good train club, but I have to take this off now because I'm getting hot.
Yeah. So kind of explain what I mean by pulse width modulation. Let's say you had an analog locomotive and you go uphill, right? You're basically fighting a set voltage, and going uphill, you've got your drag of your cars. But in a pulse width controlled motor, it's like a strobe light. It's always going to sort of give you a burst of full power and turn off and give you another burst of full power. And how that averages out gives you a set voltage. But the way I think it's like a strobe light. It's always constant at high power, but the speed is generated by how fast those pulses are. And so I think that might actually assist with constant speed uphill, because when you're applying even like a short burst of power to the motor, it's always going to be sort of full power, and that's enough to actually pull the motor to the next sort of segment so that it's constant. In other words, if you're going uphill, it's not slowing down the strobe effect, right? It's always going to have the same strobe timing. So maybe longer winded than it needed to be. All right, one other question. On a CS3 Plus, with 2 USB drives show up, even though he has one USB stick plugged in?
Well, I think he said he has a mouse plugged in also. So I think the CS3 is seeing the dongle for the USB mouse as another drive. I would just ignore it.
Yeah. I mean, it's unusual that it would identify it as a drive, but I guess it's possible. Can I press a single function key on a locomotive and activate more than one function? If example, lights and engine sound. You can, but
that's
Rick,
in the
you
function.
have something to say? You can actually do that in the function map.
Yeah, yeah.
I never tried that. I was going to say you could probably
Uh,
create an event, but that's a different story.
you know what? I'd have to double check that. I know you can do it on the programmer, the programming software. It's yeah, you can do that. You can map the sounds and functions together on the same button. That's
It's
not hard to
interesting. Yeah,
do.
I wouldn't think you could.
Yeah. Um, and I think you can do it on the central station. I would have to double check and physically do it. Because there are a few things you can't do on the central station that you can do in the programmer. None, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I know there has been a couple that you have to do on the programmer. So it
Yeah.
should be, you can definitely do a sound and a function.
So yeah, something to explore. And that kind of brings up this interesting topic that, especially with I think some of the LGB guys who are trying to reprogram locomotives or remap functions. There are times where you'll notice on the CS3 that changes that you make to either articles or events, or I think even locomotives, um, it's not necessarily changes that you're making to the decoder of like the locomotive or article. It's actually making output changes. In other words, what is the central station command sending out? Or so in other words, you could be making changes, program changes in the CS3, but all you're doing is you're affecting the output from the CS3. Sort of, kind of like saying if you can program two functions to activate on a single button, is it the CS3 that's actually just sending out the two commands, or are you actually sending the decoder, reprogramming the decoder to actually operate two functions at the push of one button? So there's sort of this weird sort of, it's like two ways to do a single thing. Just kind of, I can't really cite you a real example, but I have noticed it on a couple of occasions, especially when it comes to using conditions in an event where the if you use something like a signal light, you want to know if the signal light is red or green. um, what that does is it evaluates what the software says a signal light is. So for instance, if you turned a signal light to red manually and then you disconnected it and you hit the icon on the CS3 to green, you have, two incorrect evaluations, and the system won't look at the actual physical light. It's going to look at the software setting. So just sort of a long explanation there. You got a question, Rick? Rick, you mentioned ETE, your knowledge of them.
All too well. ETE, European Train Enthusiasts, great club. Look up your local chapter, join. It's a good club, a lot of good people. And if you don't have a chapter near you, you can always start one if you have enough people.
Yeah, I'd look into it. I mean, we don't really want to sort of go outside the norm of Marklin here, but there are sort of few clubs out there that actually sort of center around Marklin collectors. So we don't really have a lot of clubs out here in the States. So.
Yeah, there's always the Marklin Insider Club, but it's not like we all get together and have a meeting. At ETE, you get together with your chapter and have a meeting, usually once a month. Yeah, I'm actually in Southern California, so I'm president of the SoCal chapter. And we got a great club. We got great guys. So.
All right. We have a turntable question for CS3. Let's see. He's tried to add it to the layout, and all he gets is a large window showing half the CS3 screen, but not attaching to the lead track. Am I doing something wrong, or is this not possible?
We probably have to see a picture of that because it sounds like he's trying to put it in a diagram, and He needs to attach his track points.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, we don't really. It's hard to evaluate exactly what you did. I will try to. Let me pull up a diagram if I can, um, just to see if it's the same issue. Where's my turntable? There you go. All right, let me share my screen. Oops, wrong button. All right. So if you don't have this diagram, let me actually do this. Edit trackwork page. I'll get rid of the turntable here. Delete. Yes. Okay, so let's say you're trying to add your turntable, and I think what happens a lot is we end up getting this weird screen. Let me get this out of the way here. Open up my, whoops, wrong button. Open up my article list. So if you're trying to drag where you're going to bring your turntable in here, the moment you click on it, you get this big screen. And this screen is actually not putting the turntable in the layout page. So, it's just giving you a control window to operate the turntable. So what you actually need to do is when you click on this and you get that big screen, you're going to have to pull your cursor around so that it actually shows up in the background on the layout page. And then you can release it. And therefore, you now actually have the turntable where it needs to be. It was a little kludgy, but now you have your turntable where you can move it, you can rotate it, and you also have the attachment handles that are needed. So now I can actually just drag and place it according to where I need it to go. Okay, so I'm kind of assuming that's what your issue was. So that is that. And then get out of edit mode. Okay. I'm going to actually load up another system. Do we have any other questions? Oh, here we go. How do you adjust the stopping of a loco to make it slow to a stop versus just stopping real quick when you push the stop button on an MS2?
Well, you can't, because when you push the stop button on an MS2 or a central station, that kills track power instantly. It's an emergency stop, so there's nothing you can do about that. And he goes on to say, can you do this similarly to achieve a slow start? No, you can't. The mobile station isn't really capable of slowing a locomotive to a stop. The central station is. You need to use a brake module to make it slow down and stop, basically, and you need something to activate the brake module. So the mobile station is basically a controller for locomotives, turnouts, and signals. There's no routing capabilities in it. Any kind of routing capabilities or any kind of routing you want to do, you would have to go back to the old analog days and do it with read contacts or circuit tracks. So you can't use an S88 and do any routing within a mobile station.
Yeah, and that really refers to, if in your description, just pushing the stop button, it's going to immediately stop the train. But if you're sort of like some guys are trying to figure out how to get the brake squeal to activate, and you're trying to slow down the train that way, I think the only way you can really do that is if you sort of turn the red control wheel as fast as you can to 0. And that's when sort of the acceleration braking delay kind of kicks in, and you can sometimes get this brake squeal that way.
Right.
So, okay, should we go next question? This is in regards to event editing. When I set an item within the event not to action but to condition, and its value to continue, then it is supposed to stop running the event if the condition is not met. So far, so good. It does that. However, if the condition is not met, the conditional item then turns red. The status symbol reads paused and not stopped, and a green number of events not worked yet is displayed. So it appears that it is only pausing and not terminating the event. Is this normal? I believe it is. This is one of those case scenarios where I haven't really done a lot of event work in that manner. There are times where I do have events that just seem to always be in red because they never will sort of be met. It's complex when you're dealing with a number of events because you don't know, especially when events interact with each other. You can actually set up conditions that may prevent your situation from actually going green or actually being met. So I don't think it's anything abnormal. Usually when you're running your layout and things are just not working, then you really know you have a problem. If you have that red and things seem to be operating okay, that's normal. I mean, we are dealing with, when you start going into events, we don't have 100% of the answers because there's just so many things so many ways to skin that cat, so to speak. All right. Okay. Well, I guess I didn't save this right. Yeah. Any other questions? I'm gonna reset my event thing here that I was doing earlier. I can actually go into a little bit of events. I was talking to Rick about whether or not we want to do some event showing today.
Well, one little thing, we always forget to tell people, back up your central station. Back it up before you do any changes. Save it once you're done with your changes, because especially when you're loading a MFX item, and I don't mean a locomotive, I mean like an accessory, like the turntable for one. Back it up before you do that. That way you have a restore point in case something goes wrong, meaning in case you do something wrong. Curtis and I have been down that road with many people, and even for ourselves, we have forgotten to back up and we have to go and recreate everything we just did. In fact, Curtis even has trouble with his layout right now because he forgot to back up, right, Curtis?
Oh no, I had a backup of it. I was just working with other. It actually has to deal with MFX addressing, and this actually went beyond backups. So, because I did have a backup of the system, and because the MFX got readdressed, it wasn't recovering the normal way, and I actually have to reset certain things. But I don't want to scare you guys because that's a long conversation that we don't really need to get into.
I know you did you get anything special from the factory in your box?
From my boss, I don't think it was anything.
No, from your box. Anything special in there for you?
You mean the package that I just received?
Yeah.
Other than the locomotive?
Yeah,
other than not that. Yeah, you don't want to. If you guys want to know, when I get packages, they're usually great. I get products that I need to test or something that I've ordered. But instead, the first thing I saw was this. Don't ever order from Rick.
You too could get an autographed picture of me.
Addressed to you. Oh, there you go. Enough of that silliness. Okay. Yeah. If you should I maybe go through?
Yeah, quickly go through that, because that shuttle route that you did is very. I hate to give you a compliment. Is very ingenious, and it does work nicely.
Okay. Well, yeah. Let's talk about that in the meantime while I'm doing that. guys do ask questions if you haven't. You know what? I haven't even checked the YouTube. I always feel like we neglect YouTube because we never really see their questions. But let me show you what's going on, guys. This is something that you can all kind of apply if you have the room or the space to it. So this here is a basic track, and we actually have a demo track that we bring to shows. And I'm not going to show you the advanced setup on this one. There's basically there's three ways you can run this. So this is this straight layout. It's sort of an advanced shuttle system. And it's not just a single line point to point. In other words, where you just have one train at one end and it just goes back and forth. This one actually allows you to set up multiple trains on one end and go to a single end station. Ideally, for the easiest thing to do is if you have matching terminal points for the amount of trains you want to run. So for instance, if you had two trains and you want them to be on a shuttle, the simplest thing to do is have two terminal stations at each end so that it can run back and forth. And the reason why this is sort of a challenge, or has been a challenge, is because you can run this with a single train easily, and you can run this with three trains easily, because if you look at the three endpoint, I can have a train on each line, and every time it goes to the endpoint, it just needs to return back, and then it can send the next train out and send it back, and so on and so forth. The hardest challenge, and I'm not going to get into that here because it really is sort of advanced stuff that you kind of have to program a construct that isn't available as a macro or anything else, and that's running two trains. And the challenge there is because let's say you have a train on this line and you have a train on this line. You can set and so how do I wish I had a way to easily label this. Let me see this. I think we have diagram tools here, right? Okay. All right, so let's do this. If I have train one up here and I have train two here, right? So excuse me, you can't really type handwritten. If a train leaves one here, this is train number one. If it leaves this station and it comes back, and let's say it gets to here and I want it to return here, right? So now I have, where's my, let's text. Now I have train one down here. Okay, so now train is moved down here. And then what I can do is I can actually send train two up here and then return here. Okay, so now let's see. Clear all drawings. So now I have train one down here and train two is up here. Okay, so this might look easy and so on and so forth. What happens is train now gets up to this position and this now becomes train one. The problem here is that the system itself, you've actually reversed positions, because remember train was up here first and now it's swapped position. Your system has no way of knowing which train is which. Okay, that's why we have to have either matched lines or a single line train, because in this instance, let's see if I can select this rather than retype it. In this instance, train one always returns back to one if it was a single line, right? It's always going to be the same train. There's no mismatch. And then if you didn't actually have train two, it doesn't really matter because one can always go back to these positions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the two easiest ways to do a multiple line shuttle. And one you may not really use, but it's just easier to set up, and plus it hopefully give you guys an insight on how to program some events. So what I'm going to do, let me get this window out of the way. So let's open up my event window. Oops. Come on. I'm going to create an event. The first event we're going to do is we need to do two things. We need to create an event that starts the locomotive and stops the locomotive. And so the first thing is I'm going to select this. And hopefully And this is going to be this particular locomotive, and I'm not going to really give it a command yet. It's not going to be controlled by any triggers on the track. So we'll just call this, call it Loco on, because I'm going to need it later on. Loc, caps. Loc. Oops, this isn't going to take. I got to write down here, don't I? Loc. Dang it. Sorry, reversing my text. So that's Loco 1. That is basically a stop event. And actually, let me go back there and re-edit that. So come on. Where'd it go? Edit event. There you go. And just so I know that's a stop control, I'm just going to type in stop. So I needed to do that. The next thing you do, I'm going to use the same locomotive. And this time I'm going to give it a speed command. So, and you'll basically adjust these speeds wherever you want. And if you ever get to this point where you want to change locomotives by simply clicking on the icon and not the speed, you can actually select the whatever locomotives are in your library. And this is going to be, dang it. This is one weird bug that they have here. One, go. Okay. There is also, because we have the locomotive going here, I kind of need to give it a direction. And let's see if I remember how to do this. Can't do it when the locomotive stopped. Let's see if that was it. Come on. What am I doing wrong here, Rick? There you go. Okay.
First off, putting everyone to sleep.
Yeah, thanks. That's the stop command. This is the go command. And I want to reverse these positions here. Okay. So this command icon here, when you go into edit mode, you actually have three values here. These first two values is always going to start the locomotive in a specific direction. And what we want to do is, and this is something they've added to the CS2 programming that wasn't in existence before. You click on this one here, and whatever direction it's set for is going to swap directions. So this is really handy to have, because before, when I did this earlier shuttle, I actually had to have 3 events for one locomotive, and that was to make it go forward or go in reverse. But using this functionality in the event, it's just going to switch directions, whatever endpoint it is at. Okay, so now to do the actual track functioning, I actually have 2 contact tracks. That's C1. Let's go with C1 and C3. Okay, so I'm going to program the first one here. And to do this, you just kind of take your trigger, your track trigger, your contact trigger, and drag it over the manual mode. And it generally will say C1 only, but I think because I'm not actually activated on track or actually have sensors on there, it's going to list both. So the first thing we want to do is when you actually have, oh, geez, you're going to really make me work for it, aren't you? So this is the contact at CS1 control. C1. You see, this is the problem when you actually type up here, guys, at the top. It doesn't take the changes because it opened up this window down there, and it won't accept it. So you always have to come down to the text box, type C1, and this is going to be what I call an arrival trigger. So basically, it's activated when C1 turns on, which you can see it's not really giving me that command. So that's really annoying. The first thing you do is when your train hits that trigger, we want the train to stop. And this is where you actually drag this event where it says C1 stop into your events window. And that's all you really need to do at that point. If you just want the train to stop. And then what we can do is we can set up timing a timing delay, and I'm going to open that up and I'll give it a 5-second delay. And then I will next give this extra command a go command. And in this case, you can go in there and edit it. It's going to reverse the directions of the locomotive and set it for a speed of whatever you set your speed for. So to see that in action, I will just activate this, and hopefully this is going to work. Let me get rid of these events here. These numbers are distracting. So hopefully this is going to work, because it's always annoying when it doesn't. Oh, actually, let me check the article list. Go away. System is going really slow on me. Do I have something open here that I don't need? There you go. Get out of edit mode. You do need to, once in a while, you have to check your articles. Since I've loaded up this system from something else, I might actually be addressing the wrong controller or the wrong S88. So these should all be under, I guess, 88.2. Yeah, these are all incorrectly assigned, I think. Where are you? It's running into the instances where some pre-planning would have helped. Okay, so it is just saying LSN1. Okay, so if I hit this trigger, normally it's going to stop the locomotive and then it'll show a directional change and a speed change. And it's not doing it just mainly because I'm not in the proper mode for this button. See up here, it still wants to read manual mode. And that's this icon right up here with the hand. So I don't know why this became so difficult, Rick. I mean, before it used to work just the way you wanted it to, and now it's just kind of giving you this whole issue.
You may not have your contacts assigned, and you may not have an S88 hooked up.
I do. I have a Link S88 connected.
I think your contacts might be assigned to the wrong S88.
Okay, so that's why I went to. So okay, that's good. So you guys, if you run into this problem, you go into the system mode, and under the Link S88, you should have a green check mark next to the one that's connected. And this is where it's baffling, because it's actually registering as connected. So yeah, all right. So
contacts now, see if they're Link S88.
Edits article lists.
Yes.
And view S88s. So these are Link S88s.
See, there's none there.
Yeah, why are not? Well, no, they're all in here.
Not under Link S88.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
See,
Rick does have, sometimes he does help.
You got to go find him.
Turn out so good. You know what? Why are they not in here? Oh,
they're there.
There you go. Oh, because CS1.
All right.
Link S88. Yeah, these are connected correctly, right?
Okay, then how come they don't show up on the list?
That's a good question. All right, let's do this way. So over here, I'm switching them over to be controlled by a certain device. So that might be the issue. Yeah, you know, the interface, it's not perfect. You know, just
there you go.
Makes you go batty. Okay.
That might help there.
That might actually be it. So yeah, they went from red. Okay, here we go. Let's try it again, folks. Do we have any questions coming up? Because I'm not really monitoring that.
No, everyone's just attentively watching you.
Mesmerized by the befuddling experience.
Yes.
Yeah, it's still not. So let's go back into our event editing. Okay, see, look at that. I went back to manual mode. Okay, there you go. So let's edit this out. Whoops. There's a drag issue there. Close, let's go to edit events. All right, so you see it went back to manual mode on me and I didn't catch that. So let me actually just go back here, open it up. I'm going to take the C1 trigger. God dang it. You guys, you have no idea how much I want to be swearing right now. Go away. Real estate. Just want to see the screen behind it. Drag this in here. There you go. There's your C1 trigger. The reason why I have two lines here is because I clicked on the one step and it's opening up the editing window below that. So I want to simplify the screen. Close that. Let's get out of edit mode and re-enter. Okay, so now we're back in edit mode. Oh, geez, Louise. Do you really have to be that difficult? Okay, so C1 is basically activating these two events. This one's actually highlighting the event. These three windows is just showing what's in Loc 1 Go. So close that, and hopefully this is going to work now. What did I give a 3-second delay, 6-second delay? There you go. You see it changed directions and it added speed. Again, so let's kind of go back to this. Now, let's say I'm just dealing with line. It's just going straight back and forth. And you can do the same sort of commands for C3, which I will do for you really quick. So close this background window because I really don't need that. And
You're really quick is really long.
Yeah, shut up. So we'll take those, open my event window. And it's the same set. You just put the two same commands in here. Don't forget to add a delay, and I'll skip the delay right now. And that's this delay here. Actually, I'll give it 1 second so we know. Okay, and I won't even title it. So basically, train leaves there once it makes contact with C3. Now, remember, you're going to watch the locomotive over here. When I click it, it should stop, change directions, and then give it speed. So the train leaves there, does the same thing, and that's how you can program a simple shuttle using a single line. This one's got a longer delay on it. Now, because I have a 3-in-1 shuttle, we're going to add some more elements into that event. And the way you can do that is, let's go back into events. You can do it, you can randomize it, which is really kind of cool, but right now we're not going to do so. We're actually going to create an event that is going to look at the state of these turnouts. And if I drag those in there, you can see that they're just both going to register straight actions. And these are actions. So what it's going to do is, if your turnout was this way, it's going to set it for straight. But we don't want to do that. We actually want to figure out which direction they're pointing. And I'm going to go into the edit window and click it to, I'm going to click it from action to condition. I'm going to disregard this, even though we've had questions about this. I'm not going to answer to that. One question, should I back up CS3 and a USB? I can delete old backup in CS3 Plus. Yes, that's a different type of question. See, somebody's already moving beyond topic.
Yeah, I was waiting until you're done to answer, Gary.
Yeah. Okay, so basically what we're doing here is when this command gets identified, it's going to look and see which way these two turnouts are switched, and then you can actually reroute it to, let's just make it send up here. And I'm going to now change the position of the action. So if these two are showing straight, then I can just simply switch T2 to go to another direction, and then the train will return to a different point in the layout. And that's how you can sort of reprogram multiple lines. So you would maybe set up three events that are triggered off of this endpoint, because remember, you want to sort of design everything off this one end. So what you could do is C1 was this one here. This is the arrival point for this trigger. And you might want to program 3 of these because the next step you'd want to do in that point is we're going to add that's what is FS for? Sorry, let me close this out. That's simple evaluation. No, this is the one we want. We want to add this to C1A. So this is where you can actually drag this one in, and it's actually going to follow that command. So I'll show you what's happening here really quick. Or yeah, I keep saying really quick and it's not, is it? So watch the turnout on 2 after the routine goes here, reaches the endpoint, changes direction, and then it turns that turnout back. Okay, and C4, so the train is going this way. So what you want to do, every time a train reaches here, you just want to redirect it to another line. If you're doing 3 trains, you really don't have to do that. It just goes back to where it came from. Let's say, let's start here with C4. C4, arrival. Oh, dang it, did this again. C4, arrival. Okay, this is going to be this contact track. Whoops, it's a controller, not a condition. So get rid of that step. C4 actually needs to go over the manual control. And what we're going to do now is we're going to, you could do it first. We're going to evaluate these. Sorry. What am I doing? I'm getting myself confused. Might be time to move on beyond this topic.
Well, basically, what you're doing is you're using the turnout positions to the central station will evaluate that as a condition and
exactly
accordingly.
Yeah,
you're not using a condition of occupation like on the old CS2. You're using a condition of which way the turnouts are turned and the combination thereof.
And, okay, so basically we had C1A here that goes to FS5 to the track on C4. And I actually need to have another trigger using also the same trigger. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another event, and we're going to use the C1 this time. And this time, without adding the stop and goes, guys, we'll just do this. I'll make these the conditions. And then I will now set T1 to turn. Okay. So this will give you like 2 stages that you can deal with. Now, you can tell the difference between the first C1, that's this one here. Is that right? Oh, this contains the FS5. Sorry, guys. You can tell this condition has when the 2 tracks are straight and it's making the train turn, and the condition here on FS7, which is actually one that straights, one that turns, and then turns another direction. And this was actually being triggered slightly different. I probably maybe shouldn't have done that for clarity, but essentially this one it's just got a nested value in there, and forgive me for doing that. So this is going to be another C1 controller. Whoops. So call it C1 arrival 2, because it's actually almost the same without the nesting. So ideally I should have nested it the exact same way, but you can kind of see there's a way to do this. So we'll start off from the default, from the train starting on this point. It hits this track. Sorry, it was in mid-process. It hits this track, reroutes the train. The train's now at C4, and I have a reverse command here where it's going to go back this way. And now when it hits C1 again, remember we're looking at the conditions of these two turnouts. And it resets it now to go this way. And if I do that process one more time with C2, the third time it hits this, it's going to actually reset these two turnouts to go straight, and you start the whole cycle again. So hopefully, send questions. I know that was a little confusing. It was, I thought I could simplify the explanation on it, but it gets pretty involved. You kind of have to track what you're doing, and the order on it. So I think I'll hold off on that for you guys. If you definitely have questions, go ahead and ask. Go ahead. You want to answer that online question? Or did we?
Gary, should I back up in the CS3 and USB? There's really no reason to back up into the USB unless you're going to transfer it to another machine, or unless you're afraid your central station is going to fail. I guess it's okay to do it. There's no harm in that. You can delete any old backups that you don't want. I don't know whether we do that or not. Don't we just keep a whole bunch of old backups in case we want to go back to them? I know I have a bunch.
Yeah, I mean, your internal memory is actually pretty big. I mean, you guys can, you can see how many files I've got stored here on my CS3. Like Rick says, it's good to have them on a USB if you're going to transfer them to another machine. But you also have to keep track of where your USB sticks are. I've got several, and sometimes I always pull the wrong one out. But yeah, there's tons of, you've got all these default backups here on my system. And you can load up as many as you want. And that probably is another good question to show. I'm going to install a USB stick into my CS3 for those guys who don't really know this that well. All right. And I might need to actually close out this window to get it to reset and read. So when you're dealing with a USB stick, the CS2 used to have an option where you'd click USB or internal memory. It's changed locations. It didn't need to have a radio button, is what we call them. But if you want to do either save or restore, rather than just being a straight CS3 listing up here at the top, it actually adds a USB listing underneath it. And if you click on that, it also has a backup folder. Okay, so these, this is the folder stream, guys, because this backup, you can just click on the device and it's not going to reveal anything until you click up the backup folder on either the CS3's backup folder, or in this case, the USB stick's backup folder. And that's how sort of that tree works. You have to do the same thing when you're trying to save or restore a file. You need to first go into it, and then if you're trying to recover a file off your USB stick, make sure it's in a backup folder. And you can see there's an extra folder here that had a CS2 diagram in it, but you have it in a backup folder itself. And this is the file structure you need to have on your USB stick, by the way, if you're going to take, like, say, a file from somebody. You need to make sure it's in either the CS3 folder with a backup folder, and then you can put it in there, or just, or in this case, there was a CS2 folder that I needed to use. So again, this is just the file link.
You're still sharing your screen.
Okay, I was just looking at the questions. So there you go. If I know the Loco's running number, again, how do I find the Marklin local part number for that Loco?
Part number. Okay, so you're saying if you don't have a box and you want to know what the item number is. The item number is the number on the box from Marklin. And usually if I don't know what it is exactly, I'll just Google Marklin, 50020. And from there, you can usually figure out what the item number is. That was an easy one.
Yep. Okay, anything else?
Oh, we must have covered everything.
Yeah, you know, as we get dumber, these guys are getting smarter, and they don't have to ask as many questions. Who do we got available here? Anything in email?
If anybody wants to raise their hand to ask a question, you certainly can.
Is there actually we do have some questions regarding LGB users trying to remap functions, and that's
in the CVs.
Yeah, that's you make any headway on that?
I haven't tried. I just saw that email this morning. So
Yeah, we right now, because of I guess growth for however long it's been, LGB users who have been using their DCC controllers forever, getting involved in MFX decoders and MFX controllers. We're running into the problem of they're using their DC controllers and need to actually reconfigure some of the CV values to remap functions. Unfortunately, we don't have any solid answers at this point, so something we have to research into and figure out how to make those adjustments. Plus, we don't have any experience dealing with third-party controllers. All right. Well, I don't have anything else to add to that wasn't already as garbled as what I put out. Anything from you?
no, we well, now that we haven't put in a newsletter. Somebody was asking about the index of our newsletter articles, which is usually in the January issue that we do.
Yeah, and if you do want to see, I don't. I think we're a little bit behind as far as all the updates from this year. There's definitely a new one coming up. If you do need an index, send us an email to digital@marklin.com. We'll be happy to get you a link on that. I suppose. Actually, can we? I can post a document here in the chat window.
Okay.
So let me connect to my drive. Of course, it wants to connect to the wrong guy. All right. Give me a minute to get that for you guys, and you guys can ramble on about whatever.
Wake them up from your speech.
Yeah. C drive. I think, do we have the
We only have it up to 2020. We don't have this year's.
Yeah, I don't know if I mean, I was adding some, but I might be a little bit behind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let me actually check my Loco account. Let's see, digital articles.
Well, if anybody has any questions while Curtis is
Fumbling with this.
clicking his mouse.
It was a scratch.
Got to be
It was a scratch, man. It was a scratch. I was just scratching. Uh, 2020 number 10. Let's see what your, yeah, I think we're only up to the 2020 editions. Yeah. So I'll post those here. All right, there's a couple of links in the chat window. One is for the webinars and the other one is for the digital newsletters. And these are up to the end of last year. We're about to update. I should be updating this pretty soon. So
There's only one more newsletter left this year.
yeah.
We need topics.
Do you know whether the Marklin main station app will be available again? It used to be available for download, but it seems to have gone from the App Store. Yes, we've noticed that too. I don't know what the metric is on why they remove it, because it actually has been removed before and returned. But just sort of being aware, the main station app really was critical for Central Station's 2 users. It's not needed for the Central Station 3 guys. So if you have a Central Station 3 and you're asking about that, it's not necessary. But obviously, if you have a Central Station 2, it helps immensely to have that main station.
Yeah, I think
app.
the mobile station app is still available, but the main station app is not. And that's kind of odd. I still use my main station app occasionally. But it is hard to find. Last I heard, it was like not on the Apple Store, but you could still get it as on a tablet.
Yeah, I'm kind of, it's, unfortunately, it's trying to deal with however Apple does with stuff. I think the last time I kind of lost it, I can't remember if it was, when you do a search for it and it gives you sort of the download from the cloud because you've already loaded it.
Right.
So whether or not it loads up that way, I know one time it didn't even come up in the search, and so I didn't know if I could pull it from the cloud. Let's see. Don't think I have my tablet here. Guess I can look it up. See if it pulls up. I doubt it will, but you never know. Nobody accuses me of not being optimistic. Unless I'm dealing with Rick. That's a whole different story. Sorry, I can't answer you. Main station. Was that 1 or 2 words? Do you remember?
2 words. We were supposed to mute our phones, remember?
That's my iPad that's ringing.
Oh.
Can't control that. Okay. Let's actually type in Marklin. Main station. Yeah, it doesn't really show up that way. Wants to give me a Minecraft mod.
Yep, well, there's your answer. It's not available.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just hard to tell because sometimes I think, I don't know what, it had disappeared before and then notes had to be sent to Mark in Germany and then it reapplied itself again. But haven't heard anything since. So it's weird because for a while there, we were actually able to do some, I think we were able to actually get some video screens from the CS2 and now we can't. We can only do screen grabs for demos. So by the wayside. Okay. What do you think? Are we at the end of the session here?
Yeah, I think we've pretty much dried out any topics that we might have. Here we go. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. We finally got this question. Are the club publications way behind schedule? Just received number 3, June, July. The Insider Club cover letter is dated September 2021. And on the package of the magazine, it says number 4. Okay, August. Yeah. I forget exactly what the problem was with the delay. I think it was because they basically moved the Marklin warehouse in Germany. So the stuff gets produced at the factory and it goes to the warehouse. And in that move, I think the US publications got delayed. So I seem to recall that being the issue. I could be mistaken, but that's what I'm going with right now. So, what are you looking up there?
I'm just finding new ways to ignore you.
Oh,
Sorry, guys.
Oh.
Sorry.
fine.
Just distracted, I guess. Anyways, what were you saying?
Oh, I was
Yeah,
just
you were
saying,
talking about the old newsletters, the Insider Club letters, and you had an insight on that I wasn't even aware of. So,
yeah.
hopefully, you're not behind on the digital newsletters. So, but again, you have the index. It's sort of a different area from us.
Ours are roughly on time.
Yeah, ours are roughly in English.
Very rough.
All right. Well, listen, I think I feel bad that the explanation got a little muddled there, but hopefully you guys can take something from the demonstration earlier. It was sort of on the cuff. Appreciate your questions. Appreciate you visiting us. I guess hopefully we'll have some kind of a topic at one point or another. Right now we've covered most of the CS3 stuff, and there's nothing really sort of newly challenging other than the turntable, which was covered with a little bit by me and in depth for the CS2. I know we don't have a programming event for the CS3 for the turntable yet. So
yeah, maybe the next newsletter. I don't know. It's we're always struggling for topics now because we've covered, all we can think of. So if anybody has any topics they want us to cover, besides the one we know about, CS3 and new turntable.
yeah, and there have been some updates where we kind of revise and have to go look back at old topics. But I guess to some degree we have to rethink that strategy because it's easier to point to you guys to the index and say, hey, look this thing over because it's already written rather than needing to re-explain a lot of the stuff. So, but anyways, appreciate your visits. We will, I think we'll probably end it here and we'll see you guys in a month. So,
Yeah, that would be technically on November 10th.
yes. So, all right. You guys all take care. And it's always great to hear from you guys. Right now, I think our next actual show that's still on the fence is going to be out on the East Coast. So, and that's in January. So, if we'll see you guys again. So, take care.
Yeah, don't forget to back up your central stations.
Yeah, on a USB stick or internally.
Doesn't matter, just back it up.
Yeah, work on those events. Okay, guys.
Bye, everyone.